Welcome back, class. The third lecture in the rotational turn series in Star Trek Attack Wing the board game by WIZKIDS. Combat. We're getting into combat phase today. So, just remember, we're Starfleet. Although we are a military-based organization, and many of our traditions stem from various militaries throughout various histories of the Galactic Federation. It is a great thing to know how to use violence, but it is an even greater thing to never have to think your way out of a violent situation. But if it is coming to blows and there's no way to avoid the violence, you better make sure you win the fight. Which brings us to today's lecture, winning the fight, combat in Star Trek Attack Wing the board game. So, phase one, if you'll remember, is the maneuver phase. You set your maneuver dial and you prepare to move. Once your movement's complete, phase two begins, which is the action phase. You set an action that will be dictated to you by your strategy, your build, and what's available to your faction and build. And then finally we move into the actual shooting phase of the game. So, for the purpose of today's lecture, we're once again going to be using the USS Nishizumi. This brings us to the actual data on the card. This red square here is primary weapon value. The primary weapon value of the Nishizumi is 4, which means you can roll 4 red dice when engaging the primary weapon system. The next is the green, and the green indicates your defensive dice. The Nishizumi has 2 defensive dice that it can use to defend itself with. So it's got a little bit of a punch to it, but compared to some other ships and some other factions, not a lot of defensive capability. The number below that is the hull integrity. The Nishizumi has 4 hull points. To explain that further, you have the blue, which is the shields. The Nishizumi has 5 shields, which means it can take 5 hits, negating whether it's a critical or a normal hit, before it starts taking hull damage. Once you start taking hull damage, you need to place a damage card on that card to denote that you have taken a point of damage. Once your 4 run out, your ship explodes, and then the fight's over for you. If you're on to taking hull points of damage, you've used all your shields and you're taking damage to the hull, and the enemy rolls a critical, you're going to flip the damage card around, and we'll have a extra effect written that denotes what that critical hit did to your ship. So in this case, it's an engine room fire. Treat all turn maneuvers, left or right, as red maneuvers. You see how that kind of works? How the things pile onto one another? And then listed below, any special abilities that your ship might have, which will be written here. You have the actions that are default available to that ship. So, in the case of the Nishizumi, it can conduct defensive maneuvers, it can target lock, it can perform a sensor ping, and it can perform a battle station. And those are the default actions available to the USS Nishizumi, which again is a custom card, not available through the usual sources. You need to contact folks at the Wandering Inn to get a Nishizumi card. Okay, so phase 1 has happened. Ships have moved into position. Phase 2 begins, the actions phase. So in this case, the Nishizumi is going to use battle stations, and the enemy vessel is going to prep engines for defensive maneuvers. So they've each done their action. Now we move on to the shooting phase, phase 3. So, mentioned before, low level moves first, high level shoots first. In this training scenario, I am a level 8 captain, and this unknown enemy vessel is assumed level 1 captaincy, which means he got to move first, but I get to shoot first. So, Nishizumi has 4 available on its primary weapon. Now it's time to see whether or not this enemy vessel is within my arcs. And if you look at each ship, you can see most of the tombstone data required for combat is listed there. Primary weapon value, defensive dice, hull integrity, and the shield count, as well as the default actions available to that ship. Which brings us to these blue lines. These are the arcs of fire available to that ship. So the solid blue lines indicate primary weapon arcs of fire, the default arcs of fire available to that ship. Various ships have various arcs. Miranda class, for example, has an arc of 180, as well as some of the Constitution class. So, forward primary arcs, rear secondary arcs, for use with secondary weapons such as photon torpedoes. When it's time to shoot, your rangefinder for combat needs to be within the left and right of those lines. Boom, boom. In order for you to successfully engage that enemy ship. And I'll show you in a second. So I just went through the tombstone data, and now it's time to actually begin shooting. So if we take a look here, with the combat rangefinder, anywhere between there and there, within range 3, 1, 2, 3, is eligible for me to fire at. So if we do a quick range check, within my arcs of fire, well within range 3, I can engage this ship with my primary weapon. So, but if you take a look at the combat rangefinder, there's a red dice within 1, so if that ship's within range 1 of my ship, I get an extra red dice. If he's within range 3 of my ship, however, he gets an extra green dice. So, range 3, primary weapon value on the Nishizumi is 4, which means I get 4 red dice. See, 1 hit, 1 battle station. I'm going to choose to use my battle stations that I put down during the actions phase, which gives me 2 hits. Brings us over to the enemy ship. He has 2 green dice by default, plus 1 for being range 3. He has 1 dodge, and he's going to choose to use his defensive maneuver token, negating this entire sortie, because this dodge cancels out that hit, and this token cancels out that hit. He suffers no damage. We begin the cycle again. Maneuver phase, actions phase, shooting phase. So, for the purpose of the lecture, we'll say we've gone through lecture, boom, everybody moves, they've moved into place. Actions. I'm again going to have the enemy vessel prep engines for defensive maneuvers, but this time instead of battle stations, I'm going to have the Nishizumi place a target lock on the enemy vessel. Once again, do a quick range check. He's within range 3, which means he gets an extra defensive dice, and I fire with the Nishizumi because I have the higher skill captain level, which means I shoot first. So in this case, 1 critical hit, 1 battle station. These 3 dice, because I didn't use battle stations as an action, are essentially useless. So I'm going to choose to use my target lock, which allows me to re-roll for a much better result. 2 critical hits, 2 hits. He gets 2 defensive dice to start, plus his 1 for being range 3. And he only dodges 1. I believe that the normal hits go first, beep, which means he takes 2 critical hits and a hit onto his vessel, which will be absorbed by his 3 shields. So from here, the shields start to deteriorate. So there you have it, folks. That is the basics of combat in a nutshell. Cycle of that then continue. Maneuver phase begins again. Low-level captains move first. You move into position, you conduct your actions, everyone else moves, the combat phase begins. We're into phase 3. Phase 1 and 2 kind of merge into each other. You begin phase 3, the shooting phase. High-level captains shoot first, cascading down to the low-level captains until everybody's fired or has been destroyed by the combat phase. That's all. So, you gotta keep a lot of little things in mind while you're going through this. If he's within range 1, well, he gets a red die. You get a red dice for shooting. If the enemy's within range 3, they get an extra defensive dice. Your actions need to be accounted for. You can use target locks to use secondary weapons such as photon torpedoes. Wow, pardon me. And you use all that to kind of level the playing field a bit. So, for the purpose of training, we're now going to conduct a very quick and dirty mock battle, so you can see how the shield tokens work in combat like this. And we're going to just kind of take phase 1 out of the picture and just do phase 2, phase 3, phase 2, phase 3, phase 2, phase 3 until one of the vessels is destroyed, so that we have full mastery of how phase 1 and how phase 2 and phase 3 work during the combat phase. The mock battle is all set up. We're ready to go. For the Federation, Captain Stu with no captain abilities, a bare bones Nishizumi, bare bones save for 1 set of photon torpedoes, just so we can solidify how the actions work. On the Romulan side, just a bare bones Romulan Dextras starship, as well as a level 1 captain. I've also laid out the shield tokens on each ship, so you can see how they work as the combat phase plays out. And again, we're just gonna kind of skip over stage 1, observe stage 2 and stage 3, and just have a quick, to the point mock battle between these two ships. So, phase 1 begins. The level 1 captains move first. When it's done moving, that's where it stays, and it chooses to prep engines for defensive maneuvers. Higher level captains then move. He's here when the moving is all said and done. This time, however, he is going to use a battle stations on the Nishizumi. Then we begin the shooting phase. You do a quick range check. Range 3. So, defensive bonus to the Romulan Warbird. So, 3 dice instead of 2. Primary weapon value on the Nishizumi is 4. Roll the dice, that's 3 hits and 1 miss. Romulans roll their defensive dice. 2 dodges and a miss, but they're going to choose to use their dodge token to negate the 3rd hit, which means this sortie has balanced itself out. No damage to the Romulans. Things will cascade down. All of the higher level captains will shoot till we get to the level 1s. We already know they are range 3. They have a primary weapon value of 3, so they roll 3 dice. That's 1 hit of the 3 dice. The Nishizumi is at range 3, so they get an extra dice, bringing their total up to 3 defensive dice. 1 dodge, and if I wanted to, I could have used a battle station to turn that into a 2nd dodge, but I'm choosing not to. Again, this entire sortie kind of negated itself out. No damage to either side. Okay, so the cycle begins again. Movement phase. The level 1 captains move. When they're all done moving, we're going to say they ended up there. Higher level captains move. Let's say when the moving is all done, they end up there. This time, however, instead of battle stations, they are going to target lock the enemy ship. So, we begin the shooting phase again. Higher level captains shoot first because the lower level captains moved first. This time, range 2. I do not need to give an offensive or defensive bonus to either ship. So, shooting phase begins. Nishizumi's primary weapon value is 4. They roll 4 attack dice. So, I've got 2 hits and 2 battle stations. I'm going to choose to keep my target lock. So that's 2 hits against the 2 defensive dice of the Warbird. 1 dodge, 1 blank, which means they are going to take a hit. So, that's the first damage taken during the battle. They lose 1 shield token because that dodge negates that attack. Now it's the Romulans' turn to shoot because we've cascaded from higher to lower captains. Range 2. No bonuses, they have 3 on their primary weapon. They're going to choose to use their battle stations to turn that battle station into a hit. So that's 2 hits against the 3 defensive dice of the the 2 defensive dice of the Nishizumi. 1 dodge, 1 hit. So, cancels that out. And the Nishizumi loses a shield token. So, battle continues. Phase 1 happens again. Lower level captains move first, higher level captains shoot first. We're going to say for the purpose of training that when the movement phase was over, this is where the ships ended up, right in front of each other. So, actions phase. They've already, the Nishizumi has already done the target lock. It's going to stay. They're going to also add battle stations to the target lock because the target locks stay until they're properly used. Next, the Romulan bird is going to use battle stations as well. They would have done it first because they move first because they're the lower level. So, higher level captains shoot first. We do a quick range check. Range 1 this time. So, the offensive ship gets 1 extra dice at this range. So, it's time to begin shooting. The Nishizumi is going to fire with all 5 dice. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 4 for its primary weapon. 1 for being range 1. We got 3 hits and 2 misses. They are going to use the battle station, turn that into a hit, totaling 4 hits. The Romulan bird gets 2 defensive dice. They're going to choose to use the battle station to negate that hit, which means canceling this out. 3 hits on the Romulan bird. Shield token, 1 piece of damage. Just standard damage, not a crit. Which brings us right back to where we started. We're back to maneuver dial phase. So you set your maneuver dials and you begin moving. We're going to say for the purpose of training that when the maneuver dial phase was over, the Romulans were here and the Nishizumi was here. When the Romulans finished their move, they did battle stations as their action. When the Nishizumi finished their move, they did prep engines as their action. Target lock still on the Nishizumi. Time to begin shooting. We do a quick range check, still well within our arcs. Range 3, so that's an extra dice for the Romulan bird. Just within range 3. Remember, you're going by the base, not by the model itself. So, shooting begins. Higher level captains shoot first because the lower level captains moved first. This time, however, we're going to use the photon torpedoes. So that's 5 dice, as long as we are range 2 to 3. I have to use a target lock. So, 5 dice. So, boom, 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 boom. Not a very good one. That's 2. And unfortunately, there's no extra bonuses on my photon torpedo card to give me the ability to turn battle stations into crits or anything. So, 2 hits, photon torpedoes are now disabled, and the warbird rolls its defensive dice. None. So it takes, oh, correction, battle stations. They're going to turn that into a dodge. So, they negate, and they take critical hit. So, critical hit. Warp core breach. During the planning phase, roll 1 attack die on a critical result. Your ship is destroyed. Action for the, or you can use an action for the rest of the game. You ignore the first paragraph on the warp core breach. You cannot choose a maneuver with a number greater than 1. So, that status effect is now on the Romulan bird. We automatically lose target lock. And we're on to the Romulan's turn to shoot. Range 3, so that's an extra dice for the Nishizumi. They have 3 on their primary weapon. Ooh, all battle stations, so I don't even need to roll my defensive dice because nothing happened to the Nishizumi. I would have dodged 1, 2 if I used my ability anyway. So, we cycle through again. Movement phase happens. Romulans move, battle stations, Federation moves, target lock. They've done their move, so they have to do a quick warp core breach. not a critical, so they survive for another turn. Rather than use their action to negate the warp core breach, they are going to stay and fight. So they battle stationed. So, we move on to shooting. Do a quick range check within the arcs. Range 2. No offensive or defensive bonuses for either side. Primary weapon value on the Nishizumi is 4. 4 hits. They get 2 defensive dice, 1 dodge, which means they take 3 more hits. So that's 2, 3, 4, 5, leaving 1 hull point on the Romulan bird at this time. Now it's the Romulan turn to shoot. Range 2, no offensive or defensive bonuses. They have primary weapon value of 3. 3 hits, 1 crit. I get 2 defensive dice, 1 dodge, nothing. So that means you take hit and crit, which bounce off my shields. Moving on to maneuver dial phase. You see how it goes 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3 over and over again? So when the movement dial phase is over, we'll say the level 1s ended up here and they used an action. They're going to use their action to turn off the warp core breach. Oh, sorry, that's got to stay there. Nishizumi ended up here and they used battle station. Do a quick range, you move on to shooting phase. Before that, you got to roll for the warp core breach, which is now deactivated. Blank, so they survive again. That just becomes a normal damage card. And we are on shooting. Nishizumi shoots first because it's the higher level captain. It's the lower level captain's moving first. I got range 2, which means no offensive or defensive bonuses to either ship. 3 hits, 2 of them crits. 2 defensive dice for the Romulans. 2 dodge, which means it takes 1 more hit, which is enough to destroy the vessel. Ending this mock simulation. There's the end of our first little mock battle. I fudged a couple things for the purpose of training. I believe that I skipped one of their attack phases as well. During the modified dice phase, when we were going through dodges versus hits, it should go hits and then criticals. So when you negate an attack, you negate hits first and crits last. So crits do not have any change on the shields. They still just take out 1 shield, but if you're attacking the hull directly, you need to cancel crits last. Hits first, crits last when canceling. So, and then obviously make sure you observe a proper who goes first. Lower level captains move and then action first. Higher level captains shoot first, and then your lower levels shoot last. Just make sure everybody gets their turn to move, action, and shoot. Nobody gets skipped over, you don't forget anybody. And that you cancel out hits before you cancel out crit. See how this can get a little bit complicated? That's why this game is not for the faint of heart. You must be strong of mind and will and body to be an accomplished Starfleet captain. And I mean, you know, everybody's human, mistakes are gonna get made, but it even says in the rule book, tackling is about having fun. So make sure, you know, when you're fighting for your life, trying to keep your men alive, you're having fun when you're doing it. So, that is the end of our lecture on Phase 3 of the standard turn phase, the combat phase. Make sure you observe the little things. Proper arcs of fire, proper distance, everybody gets their turn, and that you cancel hits before crits when you are attacking the hull directly. If there are no more questions, I believe you guys have a lesson on exobiology, so make sure you're not late, and do not miss the transportation seminar coming up later this week. It's getting closer. See you then. Class dismissed.